objection, go ahead and deal with that. Otherwise, if you would approve that motion again, after taking any objections from the public.
Okay, the first thing is to ratify our
Right.
meeting of last night, our decisions.
Gwen, speak nice and loud so everybody can hear their fans, so it's
Our
hard to
first
hear.
order of business is to ratify the actions that we took last night. Do I hear a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we ratify the action that we took last night at the campus.
Do I hear a second?
I would like to second that motion.
Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion amongst the public? Is there any objection? So it's unanimous, so moved.
All right.
So the first motion from last night was a motion to reject a ballot or a ballot envelope where the voter had attested by power of attorney. We discussed last night that there is use of power of attorney allowed in the code, but it is not allowed to sign the ballot envelope. Last night there was a motion by Jim with a second by Joyce to reject the power of attorney ballot envelope.
Now, do we need to do all the motioning and all that kind of stuff?
Make the motion and second. Yes.
So, do I hear a
I'll
motion?
remake that motion that we reject this particular ballot envelope that was sent in, signed by a power of attorney.
And I second that motion again. Is there any discussion? Any public discussion? Any objection? If there's no objection, that motion carries by unanimous vote.
Last night there was 2 voters who had duplicate ballot envelopes. PD made a motion to reject the duplicate ballot envelopes, and it was seconded by Jim.
I move that we reject those envelopes, those 2 envelopes.
And I'll second that.
Is there any discussion? Any public discussion? Is there any objection to passing them? If there's no objection, it is passed by unanimous vote.
There were 55 voters who were registered outside of the municipality of Anchorage. Bonnie Lynn Babb made a motion to reject the voters outside the municipality of Anchorage, and it was seconded by Joyce.
I so move again.
And I will second again.
Is there any discussion? Any public discussion? Is there any objection to this motion? If there is no objection, this motion is passed by unanimous vote.
There was one voter who was not 18, and they were identified that they did not meet the certification requirements, and Jim moved to reject that vote, and it was seconded by Joyce.
I would like to again move that we reject the ballot from the individual who is under 18.
And I again second that motion. Is there any discussion? Any discussion from the public? If there is no, is there any objection? If there's no objection, this motion is passed by unanimous vote.
There was 11 voters who did not register to vote within the state of Alaska. So they were not qualified because they were not registered to vote at all. Last night, Bonnie Lynn Babb made a motion to reject those votes, and it was seconded by Joyce. Yeah.
I so move again.
And I second again.
Clarification, is this the MOA kind of
Yeah.
No,
thing?
these ones are just registered too late.
Too late.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said that wrong, excuse
Yeah.
me. So these,
Yeah.
pardon me, these voters were registered within the municipality of Anchorage, but they registered within the 30-day deadline. Excuse me.
Okay. So
Not within, but outside.
They registered
Too late.
30 day too late, within the
Okay.
30 days before
Okay.
the election.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public discussion on this? Is there any objection to this motion? If there's no objection, this motion passes by unanimous vote.
The next set is 27 voters who requested a ballot by mail, and it was postmarked after the election date, April 1st. Last night, PD made a motion to reject these ballots, and it was seconded by Jim.
I so move again.
And I will second the motion.
Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we have a objection from the Evans campaign. So we wanted to note that objection for the record.
Okay.
And the objection is?
Well, the objection, the reason the challenge is written is, I don't know if he's protesting the fact that we chose not to count it, but Mr. Rudrick, you're here, did you want, I mean, the issue is, for example, in the example for the ballot that came from Sweden, I think your argument was that even though there was no postmark, it's likely it was mailed in time, even though there was no postmark, because it was received here by the 7th, and it takes some time for overseas mail to arrive.
Yes.
Okay.
Summarize it, I should.
Okay, thank you.
And I remember part of that, our decision was with regret. So is there any further discussion on this motion? Is there any objection from the commission to the passing of this motion? If there's no objection, this motion carries unanimously.
The next category, there was 7 voters who arrived at the precinct after 8 p.m. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. They voted question ballots, and election officials made note on the question ballot that the voter arrived after 8 p.m. Sue motioned to reject these voters who arrived after 8 p.m., and it was seconded by PD.
Sue, do you want to redo that motion? Do you want to motion that again?
Yes, I so move again. I'm sorry.
And I second again.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public discussion? Is there any objection? If there's no objection, the motion carries by unanimous vote.
The next category is voters who are not registered within the state of Alaska at all. We had 53 voters who were not registered within the state of Alaska. Last night, Jim moved to reject the voters not registered, and it was seconded by Bonnie Lynn.
I move that we again reject the number of voters who were not registered at all in the state of Alaska.
I so second a move.
Is there any discussion? Any public discussion? Is there any objection to passing this motion? If there's no objection, this motion carries by unanimous vote.
The next category is the ballots that were not properly witnessed, and there were 34 that were not properly witnessed, but the Election Commission rejected 33 of those, determining that one of them was properly witnessed. So Bonnie Lynn made the motion to reject the ballots that were not properly witnessed, 33 of them, and it was seconded by Jim Stevens.
I so move again.
And I'll second the motion.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public discussion? Is there any objection to having this motion carried? Next one.
I voted against the whole thing, besides the... I made
Not
a
this
motion.
one.
Oh, that's this one.
If there's no objection, motion carries unanimously.
The next motion was to accept the vote who originally was not, had been set aside that it was potentially not properly witnessed. And Joyce made the motion to accept the ballot for Norma Stick. Not sure if you can say. And it was seconded by PD.
I so move again.
I second again.
And we had a vote. Did we have a tally of the vote? Is there any discussion? Is there any public discussion? And we voted on that.
I actually don't have it. I have every other one, but I don't have that one.
Is there any objection to passing that motion? If there's no objection, the motion passes by unanimous vote.
The next category was that there was 9 voters who had failed to properly execute the certificate on the envelope. And PD had moved to reject the 9 ballots that had not properly executed the certificate, and it was seconded by Joyce.
So moved again.
And second again.
Is there any discussion? Is there any public discussion? Is there any objection to passing that motion? If there's no objection, that motion carries by unanimous vote.
There was one ballot that was an absentee by fax application that had been requested after the application deadline. Sue moved to reject the absentee by fax application that really received after the deadline, and it was seconded by TD.
I so move again.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Any public discussion? Is there any objection to passing this motion? If there's no objection, this motion carries by unanimous vote.
The next category was that there was no identifier on the absentee ballot return envelope. There was 6 of those ballots. The motion had been moved by Bonnie Lynn and seconded by Joyce to reject the ballot of Dana Stala. Do you want me to say what the vote was? There is a vote of 3 in the affirmative and 5 in the not affirmative. Negative. Joyce, Bonnie Lynn, and Sue had voted in the affirmative.
So we had a motion
Yep, the motion was to reject.
by whom?
Bonnie Lynn, the second by Joyce.
Can you move that again?
I so move.
And second again.
Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we had received a challenge from the Doherty campaign regarding the differences in the signatures that were on the application versus the return envelope. And Mr. Finn, I think you submitted that challenge. Do you have anything further you want to add to that?
No, I think I stated everything pretty well yesterday.
Okay. I think if I understand your position is that that should be counted or rejected. I want to make sure.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Any objection? How do we do that?
Just
since
call
it was-
for a vote again, so all those in favor.
All those in favor of Dana's application being rejected, raise your hand. All those,
Opposed. You want to do that one more time, okay?
Yeah.
Hold your hands long enough so we can
Yeah,
tally
and
it.
can I see what we
So
had last night?
last night in the affirmative, it was Joyce, Bonnie Lynn, and Sue Kenny, and in the negative, Vicky, Barbara, Gwen, Jim, and Petey.
Okay, all those in favor?
Well, to be clear here, the motion was to reject the ballot. So if you
Reject.
vote yes, you're rejecting the ballot, just to make sure, I understand what everybody's doing.
Okay, those in voting to reject the ballot? Those in favor of accepting the ballots?
The next motion was to accept all 5 with no identifiers. It was moved by Jim and it was seconded by Petey.
Say the motion again.
Accept all of the 5 that had no identifiers that remain after that other.
Okay. Well, I move that we accept these, that apparently there was other information on the application that verified who they were, and so I make that motion.
I second.
The vote last night was 7-1, with 7 voting yes and 1 no, and the 1 no was Bonnie Lynn.
Any discussion? Any public discussion?
Actually, Madam Chair, just a quick thing, just as a parliamentary thing, I just quickly just occurred to me. I think you'll also have to make a formal vote to accept the one that you rejected, because voting down a motion to reject is not the same as voting up a motion to accept.
I thought we did.
The way she articulated it, whether the chair clarified it, was how many want to accept, and there were 5 hands raised.
However you want to interpret this, I don't care either way.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this?
I think it will be discussed when we discuss later how the election should be. I don't know if this is the place.
Okay, we need to have a vote on that one again.
Yep. Paul, all those in favor?
All those in favor of accepting those ballots, raise your hand. All those not in favor? 7 to 1.
Okay. And then the next motion that I had wasn't a motion for adjournment, made by Jim and seconded by Sue.
Did you have comments?
I do. Before you adjourn this portion of the process, I wanted to make sure that there weren't any other objections from any candidate or group representing an issue or any voter, because this may be your final opportunity to raise any of those objections to the decisions made on whether these ballots are counted or not. Madam Chair, I don't see anybody raising their hand to raise any further objections.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that again.
And the second?
Second.
This meeting is adjourned.